So bear with me, okay? Kind of made this like a timeline. We're going to roll. We're going to read these pictures. Oh, yeah. I like kind of have some color, right? I can jibber jabber all I want, but if you don't have something to look at to identify, it can be kind of lame. So starting early, and by the way, I want to thank my parents for this one. Starting early in my 4-H career, had the opportunity to show goats. Didn't know how to show goats in that picture, obviously, right? But had a nice little weather there. His name was Dan, weighed 62 pounds. But that kind of started my 4-H career, okay? I was able to kind of grow and have a lot of interest in goats. Showed rabbits for a while, but goats ultimately were kind of the gear that got me going. Spent some time trap shooting. That was kind of the next step. And these are timely, by the way. So these are kind of in order from little Jeremy all the way up to what you see right now, right? Trap shooting, okay? And we'll get more into that as we kind of dive deeper. But spent a lot of time trap shooting at the local, state, and national levels. Really blessed for those experiences. It made me kind of a competitive person in who I am. Next up, oh, wow. Next up, that's a picture of Atwood Farms out of Loretto, Crescent, PA, depending on what part of the farm you're on. It was my first job where I paid taxes, hypothetically, right? So had the opportunity to milk cows. Actually started by doing some landscaping opportunities, but we go on milk cows, learn a little bit about dairy science, basic components throughout that avenue. Dropping down then, Bar Ridge Farms, the sign. Another farm I spent a lot of time, actually earned my Keystone degree because of the paid placement, which took place at Bar Ridge Farms. Kind of moving over a little bit farther, started working concrete. That was a really cool experience, which we'll dive a little bit deeper into. Had a lot of hands-on experiences, which I'm very, very appreciative of. And then Penns Manor, the PM, and the FFA, that really changed my life, guys. That was the one. That was the big kind of like the switch for me. When I became a sophomore in high school, I became a tuition student at Penns Manor, which we'll talk about more here in a minute. But becoming a tuition student allowed me to take part in a great ag program back home in Indiana County. So kind of correlating, continuing the early experiences. My freshman year of college, so after graduating high school, my freshman year of college, I went to Penn State Du Bois. So I had the opportunity, a big wildlife campus, so I had the opportunity to kind of test myself a little bit, maybe take some classes that I wasn't familiar with or wasn't comfortable with, but really enjoyed my time there. Ideally, would have spent all 4 years in University Park, but with COVID, a lot of things were kind of on the slower end, right? So really appreciative again, though, for my time at Penn State Du Bois. Kind of correlating up, took a gap year after that freshman year at Penn State Du Bois, where I'd served the State FFA Association with my teammates there. Some of them are here today, so really thankful to have those guys here as a state officer for the Pennsylvania FFA. After that year, eventually would go on, kind of correspond, go back to Penn State, right? Well, what's the next step? That sophomore year, so my second year of college, right? One of the big highlights that year was taking part in the goals program. And I'll continue to dive deeper in these experiences. We kind of correlated out. But this was the big capstone for me personally, was spending a week with Mr. Wayne Worthley in student teaching under his leadership in Miami-Dade County, Redland Middle School. So very diverse experience. I'm greatly appreciative of the opportunity I had to be there with him. Correlating up, well, your junior year, right? So what do you kind of do? Every year I tried to spend a little bit of time, tried to have specific experiences, like what do I really want to invest in, what do I want to learn, who do I want to be around? This is a good one too. Being on the livestock judging team, man, and thankful again to have some of those guys here with us. What a great semester. I couldn't be more thankful for those guys. The traveling in the van, pushing yourself, the course load that came along with that, but just being able to learn, kind of navigate those experiences as well. And lastly, big concrete guy, so kind of threw another concrete picture in there. All right, so kind of diving a little deeper, right? What do I do in the major? What have I done in the major here at Penn State? Well, some bigger experiences that I'd like to highlight, PAA, NAA. This summer, the ag teachers host a state conference in every region each year. And if you're not familiar, there's 4 regions in the state of Pennsylvania as far as FFA is concerned, which is the Western, the Northern, the Eastern, and lastly, South Central. Proud to be a Western guy, by the way. But PAA, we were in Bradford County. Bradford actually in... Thank you very much. McKean County, had the opportunity to navigate and learn and work alongside different ag teachers in the state, getting some professional development opportunities, learning what other teachers are doing in their program and so forth. Lastly, last week, we spent a week in Nashville, Tennessee, learning with ag teachers from across the country, as well as some teachers also from the state of Pennsylvania. So very appreciative for those experiences and the professional development opportunities that navigated out of that. So to kind of summarize, right, when you start laying out objectives and different things, you have to summarize what we talked about, kind of the main key components, right? So Mr. Rose's brain, my brain is kind of crazy, if I'm being honest with you, But if you kind of look at it, this kind of correlates to different things that go through my head, probably on a daily basis, every other day basis, some things. Well, yeah, I experienced this, so I'm able to apply this experience to what we're learning today, right? So a lot of different moving pieces. Courses, okay? So you're probably wondering, well, what courses over the course of 4 years of college maybe are the most impactful? Starting with ANSI 324, taught by Mr. Ben Williamson, unfortunately no longer here at the university. But that was probably in Ag Ed the most hands-on course that I had in animal science specifically. Kind of animal carcass and meat evaluation, kind of the breakdown, have the opportunity to learn how to estimate and project, but also measure the back fats, the ribeye areas, the carcass size, the weights, so forth. AE204N, taught by Dr. Curry. Really glad to have had the opportunity to take that course, a science literacy course, essentially kind of learning why things are the way they are and how things are assembled within the world itself. And lastly, Ag Business Management. If I'm being honest with you, I was a complete rookie when I went in there. Had no idea how flowcharts worked, anything about ag business, if I'm being honest with you. So those basic concepts, Bill, take those into a classroom, are going to be very, very good. Certifications, right? So what have I done? What have I tried to learn? What have I tried to experience to give students as far as the certification goes? Starting with the American Heart Association, ideally, I don't have to use the CPR cert, right? Ideally, I don't have little Johnny choking on a hot dog, right? But you never know, so really good to have that. National Safe Tractor and Machine Operators, OSHA certification, had the opportunity to get that while working concrete. Pesticide applicators license, actually went to Martinsburg, had the opportunity. Now that's private, ideally it becomes commercial in the future, but got it privately, I'll be able to use that, utilize that in my greenhouse over the course of time. And lastly, Beef and Quality Assurance. It's a great cert. There's a lot of different options. If you go to the Beef Quality Assurance website, there's 3 different segues so you can get that certification. I went the herd management route, but a lot of different ways you can take that based on what you want to do, how you want to do it. All right, component number 2. Who do I aspire to be as a teacher? So when you start kind of laying out who you want to be as a teacher, what you want to do, there's this thing called a teaching philosophy. Okay, so what does my teaching philosophy look like? First off, I love coffee. Okay, every morning, set the coffee pot, 6:30 sharp, and that thing brews. This morning, I had Dunkin' Donut coffee. It was really good, in case you're wondering, right? But in my cup, and everybody likes their coffee differently, okay? And that's okay. But in my cup, it's usually black, occasionally a splash of milk. Some people like to put sugar, this, that, the other thing. That's completely okay too, right? But this is my cup of coffee, kind of structure it my way. And those 3 components that go into my cup of coffee include student achievement, financial responsibility, and lastly, the stakeholder engagement component. These are really critical when having the opportunity to engage in any extracurricular or intracurricular program within inside a district in which I believe. So the student achievement piece, using case curriculum, there's a lot of certifications and credentials that students can earn utilizing that curriculum, right, in a healthy manner, in a way in which maybe you adjust some of the curriculum, but utilize it for the best interest of the students involved. In developing a skill for workforce development, but not only workforce development, but also college, if I go in the college route, again, the workforce or trade school, right? Giving them components which they can leave your classroom and be successful in any segue which they choose. The financial responsibility, right? The FFA and ag programs, agricultural education, it's expensive, man. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of moving pieces. So maybe you ask, well, how can we afford this in a district, right? So being respectable with time, being respectable on working hard with grant work, being proper with how you utilize a budget, and making it properly so everybody can understand, especially those who are inputting to your program, right? And partnerships, again, with business and industry. And lastly, you can see a little bit of correlation with the stakeholder engagement component, being the administration, OACs, also your LACs, just having a good relationship with them, communicating kind of how you operate and why you operate the way you do, but also utilizing local business and collaboration. So I unfortunately don't have these, the 3D version. Went to Staples this morning, opened up the box, and they in fact were not my posters, right? So we talk about being flexible, being a teacher. In a perfect world, that wouldn't have happened, right? But they were not mine, and they were not classroom procedure posters. So, but this is kind of the layout. This is kind of how we're going. Starting with the classroom procedures, okay? It's important to be respectful, and this all kind of ties. It's important to be respectful of time, right? At Elizabethtown specifically, we're block. So, but it's important to be respectable at times so that way you can get all the things done in which you need to achieve. Completing bell work. That correlation, that's really important, being able to come in, get on task, get started. Okay, refresh maybe what we did yesterday, or what are we going to start doing today? Participate in class. Sometimes, little Johnny's not going to be feeling good, right? And that's okay. But ideally, we try to participate, we try to be active, and I need to do my part, right? And being active and getting them engaged, right? Asking questions that maybe interest them, so that way they can fall back and do the same thing. Turning classwork, and kind of correlating to the same deal is arriving on time, being respectable, turning classwork, right? If you had a football game last night, I get it, right? It's okay. But ideally, communicate that with me. Hey, can I get an extension? Hey, what do I need to do to still get this to you in an appropriate manner? And lastly, I have OCD, if I'm being honest, so clean up your space, right? Just try to be clean, try to maneuver, do what you need to do, so that way the classroom is presentable for the next class and the next class and the next class. And ideally, right, that happens on a daily basis. Classroom consequences. First off, verbal warning. And there's a lot of flexibility with these 5 components, right? If you do something crazy, you do something really outlandish, it's like, well, we might have to move to step 4 or 5, right? Immediately. But ideally, on a daily basis, we could work in this order, starting with verbal warning, just, hey, buddy, you all right? We good here? We just not do that. Discussion after class, kind of same thing, but pulling them aside specifically and saying, look, we got to have a conversation. Like, you can't be, putting darts in the ceiling or whatever. 3, kind of communicate an email or call to the parents, right? 4 and 5, kind of get a little more critical, office referral, and then ultimately detention or suspension. The last component, I actually found this one and kind of restructured it a little bit, but I really like the layout. The RICE method, I've seen a lot of guys use this, and I actually really appreciate the utilization of this. So the definition of RICE on a deeper level is respect, integrity, commitment, and excellence. Okay, so first off, just being respectful, right? As a student, as a teacher, all the way around, you have no idea on a daily basis what somebody's going through. You have no idea what is going through somebody's head, right? What they're doing, what they're trying to do at all times. So that's really important. Integrity, just being honest, being straightforward. Look, I'm not having a good day. I'm really struggling here. So but also being open so that way your students feel comfortable with you to be able to come to you in those situations. Lastly, commitment and excellence, just being committed to the work. If you come in, you're enthusiastic about being there and you're really trying, it's easier to say, okay, yeah, I'll give you an extension than maybe somebody who's just zero effort, zero try, right? And lastly, excellence, just kind of giving it all you got as far as the classroom's concerned. So in A350, it's our agricultural mechanics class here at Penn State. We were tasked with making a project, okay? So tried to keep it under 15 bucks, and I did that. So what I did, bought a 1x4 board and started sanding away. Also painted it up a little bit. I made a cell phone holder. So you can set it on your desk, you can set your cell phone on it. The 1x4, which was 8 feet long, costed approximately $8. And some sandpaper. I bought a little box of it, but a sheet roughly would cost $143. So ideally, what you would do is be able to utilize this in many different ways in like an intro course or maybe like a wood shop, a basic bland area, but there's a lot of things you can do with it. You can introduce painting, you can do laser engraving, a lot of different components, but makes a really nice project for the first time for students handling sanders, saws, kind of all the basic components. All right, so as we kind of dive a little bit deeper now, so if I was going to handcraft a program tomorrow, if I was going to kind of chisel and say, well, what do I want to do, in my classroom? What do I want to teach inside my classroom? These would be the huge components which I would try to cover over the course of the year. Starting with the power systems and technology, kind of the basic components of agricultural mechanics, welding, masonry, basic building construction. Animal science, obviously an in-depth look at animal sciences and components as far as genetics, nutrition, animal management, livestock judging, meat science, meat judging, kind of those basic components. As far as plant science is concerned, I really like the idea of plant science kind of being more of an inquiry-based opportunity, giving students an opportunity to test themselves in a greenhouse, learning, okay, why did the temperature last week being set at 78 degrees not grow my plants as fast with X amount of water as if the greenhouse was set at 90 degrees and we gave them Y amount of water, right? So giving students an opportunity to kind of have like an inquiry-based experience in plant science is really important. Agricultural business, as talked about earlier, kind of just an in-depth look of how do you operate a business and kind of covering components of, it doesn't even necessarily have to be an ag, right? But how do you operate a business from the back side as well as the front side, professionally, the bookwork piece, the accounting piece, kind of moving those components. Food science, kind of the food safety proportion, how do you prepare food? Lastly, I love intro to agriculture. That's obviously your hook, right? Ideally, that looks like an ag exploration course for an 8th grade group. Every 9 weeks, have the opportunity to see as many 8th graders in the building as possible. And then your kind of more generic intro to ag course in 9th grade, which you would take all year. All right, so one of my favorite phrases, in a perfect world, okay? In a perfect world, I'd have the opportunity to kind of create a facility, a barn facility. In class, we were tasked with kind of creating, if we were going to make a dream facility for our program, what would we do? How would we make it look and why? So I would make a barn, right? And looking at this, you're probably like, man, there's a lot of doors. Well, when you kind of look at code and things like that and safety for schools, right, it's important to have a lot of entrances, a lot of ways out in case of an emergency to practice safety within inside a school district, and specifically within inside a lab space on that district's property, right? So kind of an in-depth look on the left, and if you go to the right, you can kind of see the measurements, the stall layout, kind of how I would really like to correlate that to kind of make it safe from a diagram preview. When you propose these things to administrations and stuff, right, you want to give them the exact look. What do I want this to look like ultimately when it's completely done? So being able to have that exact layout. All right, lastly, how am I prepared to make the most of my student teaching experience? So this is kind of my course load. This is kind of my breakdown. I love the idea, okay, of being able to scroll through my lesson plans, being able to scroll through my courses. So if you look to the right, oh man, if you look to the right, those right 2 columns starting week 1, and you kind of roll all the way down, kind of gives me a layout, a little bit of flexibility, right? I like the idea of there being flexibility with this because you never know. Look, there's a lot of schools that have had 2 or 3 cancellations already, right? So being able to downshift, move my lesson plans around a little bit, that's the most ideal situation, especially for my student teaching experience. And here to the left, essentially a summarization of my contract, kind of laying out all the units, all the lessons I'll be teaching over the course of the semester. Where am I student teaching, right? As I mentioned it before, I'll be spending some time at the Elizabethtown Area School District under the leadership of Mr. Mark Anderson. Mr. Stephen Geib is also an ag teacher there at E-Town. This semester, I had the opportunity to get around with Mr. Anderson a little bit. We went to the Northwestern football game, which, if you know what happened, Franklin got fired, so as you can imagine, kind of tough, right? But that was a football game we went to. But really nice experience. It was just really nice to kind of connect with him, bond with him a little bit, kind of see what's going on in E-Town just at a personal level. We traveled to the national convention together, went with the E-Town School District. They competed in 2 contests at the national level, meat judging and agricultural business, I believe, right? So 2 really cool experiences. This is actually at Purdue in their meat science lab, which the competition was held. And having some conversations over time with Mr. Anderson, one of the strengths, we're competing in FFA, competing at the state and national level. Their FFA involvement was a really high level of involvement in the application, right? But when we decided to try to kind of took that conversation to a turn, I asked, well, what do you think something I could improve, right? And he said, well, we could have some conversations about our AET improving. He said it's hard sometimes to kind of apply that to his courses. So I hope over my time there, I have the opportunity to engage in conversations and try to learn maybe why that is or how it could be better when I translate out of student teaching into my own program. What do I hope to get from student teaching? These 3 components for me, when I reflect on this whole semester, is really, really important. So number 1, patience, right? Coming through college, I found I was patient with everybody else except for me, right? So always in a rush, always trying to get things done. Sometimes it's not right. Sometimes it's not good, right? So being able to build that patience with myself so I can better myself in the future. How to adapt. I go into the day ideally thinking in a perfect world, right? Everything's going to go my way. Everything's going to work out how I planned. When I pour my cup of coffee in the morning, we're going to roll, and it's all just going to be picture perfect. And unfortunately, that couldn't be farther from the truth. So I'm going to learn how to adapt in a more productive way, best on behalf of myself and the students. Lastly, how to grow content knowledge, and ideally doing that without burning myself out, right? Because I can sit here and read textbooks and go to town, but how beneficial is that? As Dr. Ewing always says, it takes nearly 10,000 hours to be a master of something, and that couldn't be farther from, any more right. So really important concept, really important thing to take away. Last couple of thoughts and remarks. I didn't put these in here until last night because I spent a lot of time. Uh, it was a dream to come here. So this guy would be proud of me. So that's cool, right? A lot of time, man. So that's just really, really neat. And a couple people I need to thank. A lot of thank yous to go around, right? These people here. Yeah. And I don't know if you guys know, some people were willing to take a chance on here. And I'm really proud to be there. And a lot of people are waiting on me. So, thanks.
Yeah, we're gonna ask for the people on the Zoom to load the questions they can get. I'll ask for any of those here in the audience, if they want to start talking the questions to them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What do you call an alligator that investigates? Investigator. Yeah, that was good. Oh yeah, yeah. All right. Right.
Your authentic self.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. Thanks. Absolutely.
Jeremy, I know you're excited about incorporating animal science learning opportunities, and you mentioned that in your presentation. And so the question I wrote down was, in knowing that you have to navigate liability and risk in some of these spaces and be able to convey that to administrators on how you have thought of things to alleviate their fears to endorse innovative programming. I'd like for you to name 3 that you would want to prepare for and mitigate in an animal science facility learning lab that you would have at your school?
Absolutely. Well, at the top of that, it would almost be a pyramid for me. At the top of that would be safety, right? And that correlates with a lot of those components. When you start handling livestock, you start talking about, okay, how do I approach a cow? How do I approach a steer, heifer, even smaller livestock? I think we get so far away from that. Like, how do you approach a goat or lamb, right? As you kind of dive deeper into the safety components, cleanliness is really important. All these components for me kind of correlate into the safety piece. If your barn's clean, if that lab space, which I presented just a couple minutes ago, is clean in an open space, there's not crap laying everywhere, there's not tools and shovels and rakes and the whole deal. If it's a neat assembly and clean, ideally, it creates a more welcoming, open, and safe space for education to take place. And lastly, just teaching proper techniques of how to clean a barn, right? How to remove waste. Penn State Extension does a phenomenal job talking about manure management plans and things like that. Ideally, so just being able to take care of that waste in a proper manner is really important. Yeah.
If you were to do it all over again, what would you tell your 10-year-old self that you had up there? What would you do? What would you tell them to do differently or maybe take advantage of? Or would you just tell them to stick it on the same path you tell them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'd probably write a book, if I'm being honest. But just tell them it's going to be okay. That'd be the one thing. Like, it's all going to work out. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be fun. Sometimes it's not going to be fun, but it's all completely okay. It all comes around. Dreams do come true, and you just got to be patient with yourself.
I now have a question from my own. So what lesson, life or book, from goals will you incorporate into your student teaching experience?
Absolutely. First one that comes to mind, it was my first day spending a week with Mr. Wayne Worthley. I'm at Redland Middle School. Last class I taught, there was one student and he just wasn't feeling me. You know what I mean? And he was just like, I mean, he didn't tell me that directly, but you can kind of sense that when you're engaged in the room. He got up and he looked at me and he said, "Thanks, Mr. Rose." And I was like, "Thank you." And I said, "Nice job today." Even though maybe it wasn't the best job, right? Gave him a fist bump. He walked out. The next day, well, that afternoon, Mr. Worthy said, "You watch, that kid's going to come back and he's really going to appreciate that very much." Because he knows deep down he didn't try his best, maybe, right? But he still showed me care. And man, he was right. Gelly was right. I think when we were down there, he was year 31 teaching, so obviously knows a lot more than me when it comes to facilitating classroom, things like that. But I really appreciated that insight, and that couldn't have been more true. So that was really cool.
I want to build on that. I'll see Wayne on Thursday, January the 8th.
He told me, I just talked to him today.
Sitting in his home, I want you to tell me one thing that happened this past semester from the courses that you had that directly connected to what you learned as far as that field experience and goals.
Absolutely.
Be as specific as possible. I'm asking you to identify a lesson, assignment, or topic that reinforced or helped you have a better understanding from that preliminary field experience that you had.
Absolutely.
Redlands.
How to incorporate inquiry-based learning productively and not being afraid to answer questions or to ask questions as you go through. And I think I found when I was there, maybe I wasn't very good at that, right? Being only 1 year into college and things like that. But when I came off of that, I knew that was one thing that I wanted to be better in, or I needed to be better in on behalf of myself and the students. So probably how to navigate inquiry-based learning through questioning. Yeah.
So what are some long-term career goals that you have? We know you're very passionate about agriculture education. Do you plan on hopefully retiring as an agriculture educator, or are there other career goals that you have that you'd like to pursue in the long-term future?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So ideally, I would teach all the way through. Right now, if I'm being honest with you, I don't have a vision doing much else. The only way I would consider having a different conversation was maybe moving into administration, right? Knowing that if I can help teachers as an administrator, the teachers will be better off being able to help the students. That's the only way I envision being able to leave agricultural education right now as a career. But to answer your question, as far as career goals go, I could write a book again, probably have a bunch of state officers, a couple state winning teams, right? Ideally in livestock judging, meat evaluation, those components, but just being able to inspire kids. You know what I mean? Being able to be somebody that they look forward to seeing on a daily basis, being the person that they need me to be, right? Maybe when things aren't going well at home. So those are kind of the components. If I do that, I could care less about getting second instead of first at states. You know what I mean? As long as I know they get me and I got them. So great question. Yeah, Mrs. Everett.
So, Jeremy, we know that in the schools, we have many diverse learners. And some of those diverse learners can be challenging. As a new teacher or even a seasoned teacher, who do you see as being some of the most important people on your team to help you with those diverse learners?
Absolutely. The special education department is really important, and I'm all about relationships, right? I'm all about having a conversation. Ideally, I don't sit in my classroom and have lunch by myself because I'll be talking to the wall. So ideally, that's not what happens. So, but ideally, it's me taking my lunch, going and having a conversation. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be with students every time. It can just be like, hey, you guys, kind of join you, whatever, and having conversations, building relationships. And ideally, the special education department, yeah, but even other teachers who are maybe in the same position as me, just being able to have conversations. Hey, what do you think about this student? How's this going? Like, how can I give him experiences to be successful based off of what you've done with him or her? So ideally, that would be the start.
Jeremy, I'd love for you to pretend I'm an 8th grade student that's about to program. I'm agnostic, sort of apathetic in general about agricultural industry. Why should I enter your classroom? Why should I join your program?
Absolutely. Well, I'd start by saying I'm going to try really hard to offer you lab experiences and basic concepts of things that maybe you've never had before, right? In 8th grade, maybe you've had a shop class at this point, but maybe you've never been in a greenhouse before. Maybe you've never been in a meat science lab before, or maybe you've never gone on a field trip to a farm and seen animal science, like hands-on applications being in place. You should join my program because I can offer you experiences that maybe you haven't had in a classroom yet. And just give me a chance, man. I'll make you proud. Give me 9 weeks and you'll have a lot of cool experiences. I'd love to, set up an idea where maybe there's not a contest actively. Earlier, I talked about in my ideal program, I'd see every 8th grader in the building, right? Or the majority. Every 9 weeks, though, could look a little bit different based on what's going on, right? CDE season is not right now, right? So a lot of different components. How can I offer that? I'd be willing to have a conversation about offering like a mock CDE or LDE inside the classroom just to kind of give you the basis bird's eye view of what an agricultural education program offers, even if I can't get you there. Yes, Dr. Foster.
We know that communication is critical when we work with partners, community members, fellow teachers, are really our students. How will you on a daily basis communicate your procedures, consequences, and expectations to your students? How are you going to communicate and portray that to them?
Absolutely. Can you reiterate your question, please?
Absolutely. You showed us a slide earlier and had some things on there around consequences and expectations and procedures. And I was asking you is what is your strategy or how will you communicate those on a daily basis to young people that we know sometimes wake up in a new world every day? How will we communicate that to them on a daily basis?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I would start, I'm a walker. Obviously, I probably took 1,000 steps given this presentation. So being able just to facilitate, kind of walk around the classroom, facilitating it from that sense as well, being able to show the students that, hey, man, I'm kind of floating around. But also on a daily basis, just kind of checking in. Hey, are we good? Do we understand where we're at? I like the idea of like my bell works, my correlation, as far as students knowing where we're going with the class load to kind of gauge where they're at. So if little Johnny didn't come to class yesterday, or little Johnny doesn't know where we are, right? He can gauge that based off the bell work. But as far as the classroom instruction and the kind of classroom facilitation goes, that would be kind of how I operate.
About the expectations, consequences, and procedures, those three areas, like this is how we do things, this is what happens when we don't do things right.
I see what you're saying. Absolutely. Well, ideally, it would start with the base load at the beginning and reflection. So being able to come off of lessons and certain things maybe that didn't go well, right? Whether it's behavior, whether it's consequences, whatever that is, it can be a conversation of, well, why didn't you handle this well? Did you not like the lesson? Was this not engaging for you? So kind of assessing myself, right, with those consequences and guidelines in the classroom as much as the students as well. Because sometimes, right, you can have a classroom full of hands-on learners. So I can sit up here and just kind of pep the step all day long, right? But that might not be for them. They might not handle that well. And sure, that could be a behavior or consequence, right? But it's also kind of facilitating, giving those students opportunities to be successful through your instruction as well. So it kind of comes hand in hand both ways.
Thank you.
Yeah.
After graduation, what is something that you're most excited to improve on, or something new you're excited to implement at Marion Center?
Absolutely. For me, going to Elizabethtown specifically and then taking those to Marion Center, being able to learn how to facilitate all the lab spaces, right? We have a ton of space in Marion Center and they have a lot of space at Elizabethtown. So learning how do I apply those hands-on experiences and make them elaborative so I can turn them into an instructional based concept as well. So it's not just let's go water the plants today, let's go feed the goats today, whatever, right? Ideally, it turns into the theory and the concept and the instruction and kind of how that elaborates and how those differences are made throughout those labs. That's really what I hope to take from student teaching and be able to apply Marion Center. Thank you.
Congratulating him one more time. We appreciate those of you who stayed around for the presentation. Day one, we have another full day tomorrow, starting at. If you're able to come around with some of those, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll see you tonight at
Yes, sir.
6:50.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Listen, Johnny.
Tell Mr. Worthley I said hello when you're down there, please. Thank you.
Good job, buddy.